Up next, the Cannabis Reporter Radio Show with Snowden Bishop. After this message.
Evergreen's calling.
Let's face it, indoor agriculture consumes massive amounts of energy. Between cooling high-intensity grow lights and regulating climate in large facilities, electric bills can run a successful grow operation into the red. If this sounds familiar, I can tell you that you need a powerful climate control system that won't drain your green. I'm Eric Riccardi with Blue Mountain Energy. Our state-of-the-art HVAC systems are powered by natural gas and propane, which means you can reduce your electricity use by as much as 80% and get your grow operation back in the black and maximize your growing space. Visit BlueMountainEnergy.com to schedule your free energy assessment and see how Blue Mountain Energy can put that green back in your pocket.
And now, it's time for the Cannabis Reporter Radio Show with Snowden Bishop. Listen in as Snowden interviews cannabis industry pioneers, marijuana experts, policymakers, medical practitioners, patients, and other amazing individuals with compelling stories to share. It all happens right now. Here's the Cannabis Reporter, Snowden Bishop.
Evergreen is calling.
Hi, and welcome back to the Cannabis Reporter Radio Show. I'm Snowden Bishop, and I'm happy you could join us. Ever since California legalized cannabis for medical use in 1996, mom-and-pop entrepreneurs have been developing innovative formulations and crossbreeding cultivars to create new cannabinoid profiles targeting a variety of medical conditions. As the industry was operating legally in the state, despite the vexing federal prohibition, these innovators had a unique opportunity to name their new varietals, which publications like Leafly would eventually catalog, along with each strain's cannabinoid and terpene profiles, potency, and intended medical effect. One of the more notable was Charlotte's Web, which was developed in Colorado by the Stanley brothers, specifically for a pediatric epilepsy patient named, well, you guessed it, Charlotte. At the time, legal cannabis was limited to only a handful of states, so the threat of competition by large pharmaceutical companies or other outside influencers was practically non-existent, or so it seemed. So when cannabis industry pioneer Steve DeAngelo began warning entrepreneurs and innovators about the importance of protecting everything they create decades ago, not everyone paid attention. But during a keynote address at an early industry event, he urged stakeholders to get lawyers on board as a first order of business. And he said, if you don't have that relationship with a good IP attorney, you're going to make a whole lot of other people very rich. As it turns out, he was right. The sad truth is that there were companies working quietly behind the scenes, developing their own cannabis-based drugs and locking down patents. And while the Stanley brothers were first on the market with a strain of CBD they developed to treat a little girl's epilepsy, GW Pharmaceuticals later became the first to receive FDA approval for the use of CBD for treating epilepsy, which basically rendered the development and sale of all other CBD products intended for medical use off limits. They've since filed nearly a dozen patents, and most of those will no doubt overlap with earlier innovations developed by entrepreneurs who failed to heed Steve DeAngelo's advice. Now, fortunately for the Stanley brothers, Charlotte's Web survived without threat of infringement, but mostly because they sought legal support from an experienced patent attorney. And lucky for us, that attorney is here to explain how cannabis innovators can best protect themselves and their intellectual property in this ever more competitive market. David Postolski, a partner at Gerhardt Law, is a registered patent and intellectual property attorney with more than 17 years' experience in the cannabis IP space. His practice is focused on assisting inventors, creatives, entrepreneurs, and companies in protecting, enforcing, and monetizing their intellectual property. He's also a professor at Temple University and Parsons School of Design, where he teaches master-level students about IP, ethics, and other regulatory considerations in business ventures and product design. He's also the current continuing legal education officer at the American Bar Association section of intellectual property law and founder of their International Action Group and editor of their monthly newsletter. David is a frequent speaker and author on intellectual property issues pertaining to emerging technologies and has advised clients in the cannabis sector for more than a decade. I should note he will also be speaking at the upcoming CBD Expo in Las Vegas this coming weekend. And today he's joining us from Israel, where he's been living. David, thank you so much for joining me. I've really been looking forward to this conversation. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing in Israel.
Well, thank you for having me. Israel is great. I spend a lot of time here, mostly related to intellectual property and cannabis. And it's a great country. Everybody in the world should visit it for sure. There's something here for everyone. It's definitely startup nation, and that provides an energy that I've not seen anywhere else in the world. So it's been pretty cool and pretty fun to spend time here.
That's great. And I know that everywhere in Israel has been a lot more progressive in terms of the cannabis research and everything else. So it's definitely a place to visit if people have an interest in that. I know that they do have a lot of events there. But before we delve into the topic of patents when it pertains to cannabis, give me a little bit of background and tell me, how did you get into the space?
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting story. I've been practicing IP attorney, and intellectual property attorney, a patent attorney, a trademark attorney for about almost 20 years. And about 10 years ago, I decided to leave big companies and kind of devote my life to entrepreneurs. And I started working at a kind of regional firm in New Jersey. And I decided that one of the entrepreneurial things I should do is create events for entrepreneurs. So, the firm would host these meetups. So the meetup was a brand new thing back then. It was going back about 10 years now, maybe even 11 years. And so my firm, through me, as part of an entrepreneurial effort, because I was devoting my life to entrepreneurs and trying to help, startups and small companies, independent inventors, and emerging technology companies, we hosted a meetup, was the patentability of cannabis. At the time, many states were legalizing medical marijuana. Some states were even legalizing recreational marijuana around the world. It was getting attention. And so, of course, startups were popping up, and I decided, well, let's have a meetup and let's do a kind of educational session to entrepreneurs. And so I hosted a meetup, the content of which was all about the patentability of cannabis and CBD and other related compounds that are found in cannabis. And it was a great presentation. Maybe about 100 people came. It was free. And at the end of the presentation, somebody comes up to me and introduces himself as a doctor and says that for the last 2-3 years, he's been taking his daughter, who has been suffering from leukemia, to Colorado to camp out outside of the facility where they were making Charlotte's Web, which was, I'm sure people in the industry know, a CBD oil. At the time, very small new company started by the Stanley brothers. And he's like, I think you really have to talk to these guys. I happen to know the marketing director. Maybe I can make an introduction. And I found myself literally on a plane to Colorado to meet with them just a few weeks later, and was fortunate enough to kind of work with them to educate them on the protectability of what they were creating in Charlotte's Web and their extraction process and all the machinery and stuff like that, because my background is in chemistry as a patent attorney. So I was able to kind of guide them through the patent process. I also helped them on like trademarks as well and brand enforcement. But it was amazing because I got to see the company. I was with the company to grow and kind of launch into different countries, and then which forced me to understand the landscape of regulatory and ethical issues in going into another country, not from the United States, as well as the minefield of the United States, because the regulations were so different and ever changing. And so I was with them for many years. And I about a few years ago, they actually moved to another firm, which was great for me because it allowed me now to it kind of freed me up to work with other companies, because if you're a lawyer, you can't take on a client that's in conflict to your current client. And so if you're representing a company like the Stanley Brothers, who make Charlotte's Web, they're a big company. So it was hard to take on other companies, especially startups and entrepreneurs. So once they left me, I was able to kind of really start to, gather more and more clients in this space. So yeah, and the reason why the doctor came up to me was because I had just lost my sister to leukemia, and somehow it came out during the presentation. I don't remember why. Something, I think she was like prescribed the legal medicinal marijuana. So I think he just felt this kind of kinship and came up with me. So it was all fortuitous, and it's so I've been in this space for about 12 years, and I can tell you the presentation that I gave 11 years ago is a very different type of presentation that I would give today, let's say. So it's the field has changed so much in terms of patentability and trademarkability of such brands. But yeah, that's kind of how it happened. I think my sister was looking down on me, to be perfectly honest.
Wow. I'm so sorry about your sister, but it was interesting because back then, really the only legal means to acquire any cannabis whatsoever for treatment was the Marinol.
Yes.
And it was one of the very first, but it wasn't exactly like the plant molecule. It had a lot of alterations to it, which is
Sure.
what made it legal. And it was unfortunate because I think a lot of people could have benefited from the whole plant as opposed to just a chemical identical twin, or somewhat identical twin to
Oh, I agree.
THC. Yeah, but that's an interesting story though, and I think that a lot of people got into that because of family members who had success using cannabis and all of that. But you also what you were talking about a moment ago, it makes sense that things are so different now. The regulatory environment is just so different now than 11 years ago. So it all comes full circle though, and I'm looking forward to a time when we don't have to worry about the legality of all of this. But when you started picking up other clients, let's say someone comes to you and they say that they've cloned and spliced a couple of cultivars and they want to make a different breed that hasn't really been thought of before, that, say, concentrates on more of one cannabinoid over another. And let's say that they're in the industry, they've been in the industry, but now they're looking to protect themselves and really don't know where to start. What do you tell people like that? What do you tell growers?
Yeah, it's a real, so it's not, so what I tell them is not just the growers, but it's the entrepreneurs who created a device for, smoking. It's, the people that are creating apps to locate, different, it's everything. It's based in chemistry, it's based in computer science, but overall, and it's based in genetics, it's all of that. But I tell them all the same thing. And it's something that I think is, that is so important, and something that this industry, like many other emerging technology industries, lack, which is the education and the empowerment that they need in order to protect themselves. So I'll kind of unpack that a little bit. If somebody comes to me, a grower, and has a new genetic, and has created a new strain or something like that, or has created something that they think is innovative and novel, I usually say to them, well, two things. One, we should probably do a search, a patent search, to see if somebody else anywhere else in the world, not just in the country where you happen to have discovered this or invented this, because that matters. If somebody has filed a patent, whether you want to file a patent or not, but if somebody has filed a patent on something similar to yours, even the exact same thing as you in South Africa, and you're coming to me in the United States, well, we need to know that, because the United States, when you will file, will see what we're seeing, and we'll see that South African patent application that has something similar to yours or the same thing as yours, and we'll say, well, sorry, you didn't invent it. And so it's really important, the education of doing a patent search. Again, not doing a patent search so you file a patent, but doing a patent search so you know that you have the clearance to move forward